All right, this is Dr. Boff. Welcome back to some Kerbal Space Program. All right, so this week I want to set up a bit of a mining base. I was thinking about doing some in situ resource utilization, so like mining asteroids or mining fuel on other planets, and I thought it would be cool to put together a base. So we are going to make use of the Mark One Lovelace for a couple reasons. One is that it happens to be in orbit and it's utterly massive with loads of fuel tanks. So it's a good thing for me to move to the orbit of some other body that I want to treat as my mining base. And the other reason is it happens to have a refinery on it. Yeah, Cumin Industries put a refinery on there, meaning if I can just create an ore ferry, which is actually what I'm launching up right now, then that ferry can just drop down to the surface of the planet, capture some ore, bring it back up to Lovelace, and refine it into fuel up there. So that's going to be my plan. We're going to do this over on Minimus. And there's a couple reasons I picked Minimus. The first is that the gravity is hilariously low. So the ship that I can use for an ore ferry can be stupidly light with a really tiny engine, and it won't take much fuel to haul ore off the surface and up to the base for refining. The other reason is that Minimus is reasonably close by to Kerbin, meaning that it actually makes a fairly good stopping point for interplanetary missions. So let's bring this guy up to Lovelace, we'll dock, and then we will take the whole thing over to Minimus. Something a little bit odd is happening here. So I'm trying to dock to the senior docking port, but when I click to face target, it kind of turns the wrong way. Whereas actually clicking away from the target seems to actually be right. So I'm not sure why that's happening. Um, we will have to figure that out in a second. All right, time to separate off, and I put a bunch of separatrons on that launch stage, so it should deorbit itself, and then I'll have some smaller bit of space junk. So this is my actual ore ship. It's going to land on Minimus, drill for some ore, and ferry that back up to Lovelace. You'll notice the actual liquid fuel engine on the bottom is stupidly tiny because Minimus has basically no gravity. So after much trial and error, it turns out the senior docking port on Lovelace is actually backwards. So I can't actually dock with it, so I've resent up my ore mining ship, only this time I have a junior docking port on the front, and I will be docking with the junior port, because that one is facing the right direction, so this should go much more smoothly. There we go. All right, here we are in orbit around Minimus with our base. Let's detach our ore ferry, go down and do some mining. One thing I do need to be careful about is the engine on the ship is so tiny that it doesn't have much acceleration, so I kind of can't be too. I should be really cautious about when I turn the engine on as I land here. If I wait too late to turn it on, I may not have enough acceleration to actually avoid hitting the ground, which is kind of always true with these no atmosphere landings, but may have chosen a cartoonishly tiny engine for this. All right, so we have a full load here of about 3,000 ore. Let's see if we can move that up into space. Um, just barely. Okay, so this engine may have been a small mistake. At least with a full load, this probably isn't going to cut it. So I am making progress, but my acceleration is so slow that I think I'm probably going to end up wasting more fuel than I'm going to save by virtue of having chosen the tinier engine. I guess
gravitational losses. So I'm spending a lot of fuel just kind of fighting gravity and very little actually making any progress. So somewhat concerned about that. I probably, the next time I build one of these mining vessels, really should use a bigger engine. I'll see how far I get with this one. I might reload, dump some of the ore, and see if I can do it with a smaller ore load. So this needs about 350 units of liquid fuel and oxidizer to make it into orbit to dock with Lovelace. And it can carry 3,000 ore, which can be made into around 3,000 of each of that. So fully loaded, this ship is producing about 10 times as much fuel through the refinery as it's using per trip. So that's a 90% efficiency on these mining runs. That said, that's just kind of hopeful because I'm not sure I actually am going to be able to make this work. So maybe we will try to do this with a smaller amount of ore. Okay, trying this again. This time I've got 1,000 ore in each tank, so 2,000, meaning that if I pull this off, I will be creating 2,000 liquid fuel and oxidizer roughly for the cost of about 350 of each, which means I would be having an efficiency of better than 80%, which I'm still pretty happy with. But I still, because of this cartoonishly tiny engine, may be overdoing it. Safely, you could probably do this safely with one ore tank full, so like 1,500 ore and then a like 75% efficiency, which is pretty amazing. I probably should have just settled for that rather than trying to build this cartoonishly small-engined ferry ship. But if I can get this guy into stable orbit, then that's my proof of concept, and I can make mining missions for fuel on minimus, producing fuel with something like an 80%, maybe a 70% efficiency after the redesign for safety. So if I can get this up into stable orbit and potentially dock with Lovelace, then I'm happy with this. I think this is a successful mining operation. Alright, a successful mining operation since I've been able to reach stable orbit. I'm not going to bother docking with Lovelace because I don't think this particular craft is sustainable. I think it needs a slight redesign. But basically, what I can accomplish here is infinite liquid fuel and oxidizer in the orbit of Minimus. So basically an unlimited fuel in my base around Minimus orbit. So hopefully I'll think of something cool to use this for. Alright, I'll see you next week.